This has to be one of the most requested videos on this channel. So I guess, here we go. The Behringer XM8500 versus, well, a bunch of mics that they all kind of look alike. This one's slightly different. Is that title too long? It does seem long. We'll circle back to that in a bit. Also, this episode is brought to you by the letter W. Man, these things are awkward, aren't they? They say that imitation is the sincerest form of flattery. And honestly, that should mean that the SM58 should be wildly flattered, because everyone rips off this design. I mean, they even ripped themselves off with the SM48. So I guess something's working. But is it just trying to catch the fire from the popularity of what the SM58 generated? Or is the concept of the mic just best served in this exact style? Let's go over the XM8500 and see what it brings to the handheld mic styling. Now, most people compare it to the SM58, and honestly, when you put them side by side, I mean, it's impossible to see any differences other than the name and the coloring. Although if you do open them up, some things begin to stand out. One, the SM58 has a transformer, while the 8500 has just an empty chamber. Now, that seems impossible when you look at the weight of the two, where the 8500 doesn't feel that far off. Now, considering all the gunk in the 58 as well as the transformer, you'd think the difference would be more. But then you realize there's a bit more material that goes into the 8500, which does make up a lot for that weight. Also, the 8500 is just a touch taller, as the ball is a bit bigger. I mean, other than that, though, you're not really going to see much differences when you line them up other than color. So then, let's take a look at the specs. The 8500 is a dynamic cardioid mic with a frequency range of 50 Hz to 15 kHz. The output impedance is 150 ohms. And really the only other spec is its sensitivity of -70 dB, which honestly is actually kind of low. But other than that, there isn't much else for specs out there. However, comparatively, it does come pretty close to the SM58. It has the same frequency response, output impedance. The sensitivity is the only thing that really stands out. With that in mind, let's do the off-axis rejection test. This is the XM8500, approximately 6 inches away from my mouth, and this is how it sounds. This is the XM8500, approximately 6 inches from the side of the cartridge. This is the XM8500, approximately 6 inches from the cartridge from behind. And this is the XM8500, approximately 6 inches from the other side of the mic. This is a plosive test of the XM8500. Peter Piper picked a peck of pickled peppers. This is a handling noise test of the XM8500. It's actually not bad compared to the 1800S. Here with the first of the comparisons is the XM8500 versus the XM1800S. Now, I just did this one because I had an 1800S available. This is the difference between the two microphones. Honestly, I already worked with the 1800S, already didn't like the 1800S, so let's see how the 8500 stands up to it. This is a comparison of the XM8500 versus the SM48. This one comes in at about $35 Canadian. Didn't check on the US dollars on that. Put it up here somewhere. And this one is the SM48, which comes in at about 50 Canadian dollars. And I also didn't check the price of this in US dollars either. This is the 8500. This is the SM48. These are the two mics that I think are challenging each other in this whole thing. The SM48 and the XM8500. Let me know, and this one's important because these things are very close in price. Which one do you prefer? Now the XM8500 is challenging the big kahuna, the SM58, and this is the difference between the two microphones. Now, as I mentioned with the SM48, I feel as though this one's going to be a little outweighted. The SM58 is a better microphone than the XM8500. I apologize, but that's just how I see it. But this is the direct side-by-side. This is the differential between how they sound. Let me know. Do you prefer the XM8500 or do you prefer the SM58? I already know what my answer is. Sorry. And now for the final competitor. This is the XM8500 versus the Sennheiser E835. This microphone costs a little bit less than the SM58, and there are some people that think the Sennheiser E835 is a better microphone than the SM58. Maybe I'm going to do a shootout between the E835 and the SM58 in another video. Let me know if you want to see that. Maybe a more in-depth view of the differences between the two microphones. But for now, we have the XM8500 versus the E835. What do you think of the two? I personally love this microphone. It has different coloration than the SM58, and it's a very clear, very concise mic, and I just love the tones on it. The XM8500, well, we'll get to that in a second. What do you think? Do you like the Sennheiser E835, or do you like the BEHRINGER XM8500? Tough one. Not really. I like this one. Honestly, I'm not really surprised. The mic basically holds its own. Now, I didn't come into this with the XM8500 challenging the SM58, and I really don't think that's changed. That said, this does come into the conversation as a genuine option at a cheaper price. Now, it does challenge the SM48 and at a cheaper price. That said, and my personal preference, I just want to point that out, I find the XM8500 a bit harsher in the lows and a bit muddier in the mids. The highs, well, they're a bit boosted as well. I find the SM58 to have a cleaner sound, and it's a bit easier to EQ in the end. For me personally, I'm not going to buy the XM8500 again, but I also wouldn't begrudge anyone else in buying it. It does fill a role, and it kind of stands alone in that role. Now, while there are a lot of people that say this is better than the SM58, I'm going to have to respectfully disagree. And honestly, if you're looking for a microphone and you can afford it, just go with the SM58. The king keeps its throne. Time for the hate mail. Thanks for watching. If you like this video, maybe try the SM58 teardown to make it like the SM7B. It does have some shocking results. Cheers, and I'll see you in the next video.